Hey, good morning. I'm Patricia Murphy. It's Monday. This is Seattle Now. Amazon's rapid growth has transformed Seattle's and the country's workforce. Soon, that growth might not include human employees. Their 10-year plan involves more robots and potentially fewer human workers. We'll talk with New York Times tech reporter Karen Weise about what she found out in a minute. But first, let's get you caught up. There's a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of a suspected arsonist in Seattle. The Seattle Fire Department says someone intentionally set 6 fires in Mount Baker, Rainier Beach, and the Central District during October. A car was torched, and other fires were set in residential and vacant buildings. The Seattle Fire Department has not said whether these recent fires are connected to a string of arsons that happened during the summer. Some transit agencies in the region are helping out federal workers who are feeling the impact of the government shutdown. Kitsap, Pierce, and Mason transit services will let federal workers ride for free with their government ID. The agencies say federal workers who usually ride public transit haven't been able to reload their transit passes since the shutdown began October 1st. The federal government employs some 100,000 people in Kitsap and Pierce counties, home to Joint Base Lewis and McChord and Naval Base Kitsap. It happens every year, but it never gets any easier. 6 p.m. sunsets are over for a while. The sun sets tonight at 5:59 p.m. It'll only get darker from here. We turn the clocks back an hour this Sunday. Check back for more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. Amazon is known for its innovation. That's what took the company from an aspirational online retailer of everything to the worldwide tech and e-commerce giant it is today. And it takes a lot of people to make that happen. Amazon is the second largest employer in the country. Now, one of Amazon's next innovations could be transitioning away from a large human workforce and towards robots and automation. The move would likely shift the workforce and the work. New York Times tech correspondent Karen Weise broke the story. She's here now. Karen, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here again.
So Amazon has more than 1 million workers around the world. Your story this week revealed the company's workforce of the future might look different. Explain a little bit for listeners.
Yeah, so Amazon has more than 1 million workers just in the U.S., and most of those people work in the fulfillment centers and other types of operations that move packages and items and all of that. I found that the company has really ambitious plans to use automation to prevent that number from growing significantly and trying to keep it flat over time because it has grown so much. I mean, since 2018, the headcount tripled in the U.S. When they look forward, even as they project to sell twice as many items, they want to keep the headcount ideally flat. That's the goal of the kind of automation and robotics team. Amazon's response to this is not to say that's not necessarily accurate, but to say, oh, that's only part of the picture. When we save money, we can then invest it in other parts of the business and other parts of our operations, and those can have job creation potential. But it's clear that there's a substantial effort up to the board level to really invest in automation and to do what they call hiring avoidance. So it's not layoffs or anything like that, but it's really trying to keep a cap on the growth of this headcount.
Hiring avoidance. It sounds jargony. Explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's basically saying, is there work that we can automate that otherwise we would need to have humans for? Or can we get more productivity out of the people that we do have? So we can use them on fewer types of work and more specialized work, or work that is just kind of hard for robots or automation or computer vision, all these things to handle. And these are not kind of humanoid robots that they're investing in, that kind of one thing that can do it all.
You know, you visited an automated Amazon center in Shreveport, Louisiana. Tell us about that, Karen.
It was very interesting. I think it's the third generation of warehouse I've seen, and it was definitely the biggest change because the whole flow of the building and the structure of the building was different. Because, and this sounds so basic in some way, but it's actually was a huge change. They changed for the first time in decades how to store products. So they moved into a system where items are stored in bins, and then the bins robotically slide to workers. And that is both good in that it reduces the stretching a worker needs to do from bending down or going up. So there is a safety benefit for that. But mostly it unlocks this way that you can then use other robotic systems with the products, robotic arms that can peer into the bins and move items. And so this building in Louisiana, as products flowed through the building, there were big steps of the process where no one did touch them, where they would go on a conveyor belt, an arm would pick it up, move it, another little shuttle robot would put it into a specific chute. That chute would drop the package into another space that a robot would then pick it up and put it into a cart. And then a different robot would pick up that cart and put it to the loading dock. Basically, the work is getting increasingly confined to different parts of the building. It was really interesting, the orchestration between all these different systems. And you also got a little bit of a glimpse of the future. And one of the growing jobs is going to be for technicians, robotic technicians. And these are people who maintain the robots, fix them if there's a problem, work with them. Like we saw a robot, they use suction cups for their robotic arms primarily. And it had picked up this like package and it was sort of dangling and ultimately it fell down and kind of landed in a difficult place. So that needs a person then to come in and actually move it. So there is this kind of funny interplay.
What an interesting balance the company is navigating right now in this particular warehouse, probably learning a lot as well.
Yes, this warehouse is seen internally as the template for future robotic fulfillment centers. They have these vests that when high-level executives come to tour a facility, they sign a vest, like a jersey kind of thing, a safety vest. And it was like Andy Jassy, if I recall correctly, was the head of operations, the head of the retail business, the head of HR. I mean, these are like all the senior people have come through this building, and it's a template that they plan on using in the coming years in at least 40 different buildings, either building new ones under this model or retrofitting older buildings with more robotics and automation to kind of match this design.
Now, there's a lot of talk about this workforce and what might happen to it in the future. And it sounds like even in this warehouse, it's an example of how things could shift from actual workers picking products to workers who repair robots, right? Amazon has said they're designing a lot of this with workers in mind, right? This is because this is to benefit workers. It sounds like we could lose some. And at the same time, robots don't get repetitive stress injuries. They don't need breaks and they don't need health care other than some oil, right? Or some worker to come in. Could these innovations be both important and difficult?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's absolutely kind of mixed emotions around these, I would say, internally, because the overwhelming drive behind this is to reduce the costs and to move more quickly. Like that's clear in the documents I've seen. It is also clear they are tracking safety. They do care about that. They can reduce the strain, the repetitive strain or the reaching or the heavy lifting. And that is absolutely true. For the vast foreseeable future, there will be people in many of these buildings, but also the kind of possibilities for people might change. This growth of this technician force in this building, there was about 160 robotic technicians, and those are higher paying jobs. So it's 160 people. So it's like you're growing a smaller, more higher paid workforce and kind of keeping the lid on the bigger, lower wage workforce. And it's kind of important because warehousing jobs, logistics jobs, this has been a growing part of the country's workforce. We've seen the labor share of retail work slightly creep down over the past decade. It's still a big employer in this country, but it's slowly creeping down as we've seen warehousing become this kind of refuge for a lot of people. It pays better than retail in many cases. So we're seeing this kind of slow shift. And there's a big question of kind of where does it all settle in the end?
Yeah, and undeniably, those technicians working on those robots are very different job descriptions from people who are currently working in that warehouse. Different workforce entirely in some cases.
Exactly. They need, Amazon has an apprentice program. There are local community colleges in different places around the country that have training for this, but it is different. And it's not always the same people that get those jobs. Like you don't need to be an existing employee to go through the apprentice program. So it does take different requirements and it does take, training to go through.
It makes me wonder if local warehouse workers should be concerned about their future at the company.
I mean, again, they're not doing layoffs. So I think for an individual person, it's not like there's a risk for you. This is more of an economic-wide shift that is happening. And I think it's particularly interesting in places where there's these retrofits that are going to be happening. So I wrote about one in Stone Mountain, Georgia, near Atlanta. The construction has begun to add automation there. And potentially, the building has about 4,000 employees, and it will potentially need about 1,200 fewer when it's done with this shift. So that's an economy that was used to having 4,000 jobs in it from this employer, and will have fewer down the line. For any one person, they're not doing layoffs. And Amazon says those numbers are subject to change. We're still early in the process. So that's the caveat here. But you're not putting in all this money of robotics to not have labor savings. Like, that is the reason you do this. So I think it's a question locally of like, okay, those are fewer jobs down the line than there would be otherwise. And then also, in talking to economists, the progress Amazon has made puts pressure on competitors to do the same. And that's kind of both the retail e-commerce world and also elsewhere in the logistics warehousing industry.
Karen, we mentioned at the top here that Amazon is where it is today because of innovation. So should we even be surprised that they are moving towards this?
Yeah, I think in some way, no, because they have been making investments for a long time about this. They acquired Kiva, a robot maker, I believe it was 2012, and that transformed Amazon's warehouses. It got rid of a lot of the walking that you used to hear about because it brought products to the workers, and it was pretty transformative in the industry broadly. And they have been making steady investments since. I think what has happened, though, is the workforce has grown so vast. The technology has advanced. We've reported in the past on the fact that executives feared running out of workers in certain labor markets because they're kind of churning through people and growing so much. And so there's just a lot of pressure to kind of speed it up, and the ability to speed it up because of advancements in technology is like a very long-term, persistent pursuit to do this. And Amazon does do that. I mean, they're known for really grinding away at something until they get the progress they want.
Who wins and who loses when human jobs are replaced with technology, Karen?
In this case, we're seeing savings and faster speed, ability to get more items to people quicker. And that is what consumers like. It can, in this case, alleviate some of the more physically challenging parts of the job. So that is definitely a way that it is a benefit. But overall, it really depends on what replaces this. If there is this stagnation in the work or even eventually a decline, are there opportunities for those people? I mean, this country is not good at providing a safety net. It is not good at providing upskilling. It talks a big talk, but that doesn't ultimately happen at scale. And so I think what's challenging about this is there's a transition underway, but it's very hard to have a kind of explicit conversation about it when it's sort of diffuse in terms of who is responsible for doing what for whom.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what the decreased need for laborers means for the future of work.
Exactly. Yeah. So I spoke with one economist who's a Nobel laureate who studies automation, and he said the place to look is actually in China, where they've had a rapid automation push because of an acute demographics problem. They don't have enough workers. Because of the one-child policy and all these things. And so they've seen very rapid automation, and that overall that has created a lid on wages. And you're seeing that problem in the economy. And he was very clear, the shifts we're seeing in the US are much slower moving. It's not the same almost like crisis level about demographics that China had, but that's the sort of pattern that you risk having, is that it overall creates less wage pressure and less opportunity if there's not other work to supplant it. And again, this country has not historically been great at that.
All right, before I let you go, Karen, back in 2021, Jeff Bezos said he wanted Amazon to be Earth's best employer.
Good memory.
How do you interpret that now?
That's a tricky. I will say we heard a lot about that for a while, and we hear a lot less about it now. And it is still a leadership principle at the company, but we definitely hear the company talking about it a lot less. And I think the documents I've shown, again, these does appear to actually make the work safer. So that is one of the elements he talked about. But I guess I'm not sure he talked about it in terms of job security. So I guess that would be one question about it. But again, these jobs are very complicated. There has been a lot of critique of some of this hourly work, about the physicality of it. There's not a great career path. Just numerically, the ratio of worker to manager is enormous. And so there's just not much advancement opportunity. But at the same time, it has been a refuge for a lot of people, retail workers who are just so glad to not have to deal with customers. You make more than you would at Subway. You don't need to be fluent in English or even great at necessarily communicating to do the work. I've talked to people who are just shy and don't like interviews and are happy to get the job at Amazon. For immigrants, they're like, where else can I come to this country without great language skills and get a job that pays this and has benefits? So it's a very complex proposition as an employer.
New York Times tech correspondent Karen Weise, thanks so much for your reporting and for taking the time.
Of course, anytime.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Today's episode was produced by Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers. It was edited by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. Our production team also includes Vaughn Jones, Andy Hurst, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you soon.